Welcome to Martian Mixed Martial Arts.
Wow. Wouldn't it be crazy if the aliens manufactured you to be a mixed martial arts fighter? They're like, let's see if we could just turn this
I'm
dude
sure
into a bad
I'm sure
motherfucker."
if it would have happened, I would have been much better than this.
Much better than this. You're the fucking champion. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
but if I would be alien manufacturer, I would be Superman.
Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious beings tuning into the podcast. I welcome you to episode 48 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts. This week on the podcast, we will be analyzing and predicting every fight on the UFC's pay-per-view coming up this weekend. UFC 234, Whitaker versus Gastelum for the middleweight championship. This fight card goes down this Saturday night, February 9th, 2019 at 10 p.m. Eastern Time from Melbourne, Australia. After we predict the UFC 234 card, we will be recapping the UFC on ESPN Plus 2 card that happened this past weekend. With that being said, we are going to jump right into the pay-per-view this weekend. Starting things off in the bantamweight division, we have Luigi Buren, who is 11-6, taking on Jonathan Martinez, who is 9-2. Looking over at the opening betting line for this fight, Jonathan Martinez opened as the -180 favorite, Buren at the +140 underdog. Right now, looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Jonathan Martinez as the -160 favorite to Buren at +140. So not much line movement coming in on this one. I think there was a little bit of early money coming in on Martinez that pushed him down to around -200, but he's been slowly creeping back up to -160 since then. So early action coming in on Martinez. And then the more late action coming in on Buren. I'm going to agree with the late action on this one. I think it's a very close fight. We have, Buren, who is, kind of a scrappy grappler. He had a little bit of a hiccup in his last fight against Marlon Vera, where he was knocked out in the second round with a wicked body shot. No shame in that loss. He came into that fight as a pretty big underdog, and he actually, hung in there with Vera for the first maybe round and a half of that fight. But that fight showed some promise in him. But what did not is Buren's fight against Rolando Dy. Rolando Dy is one of the lowest quality fighters on the roster. I think he has actually been cut from the roster ever since that fight. So, that loss looks really bad. We've seen Dy look pretty horrendous in the octagon lately. So that loss looks pretty bad on his record. But Buren he's very aggressive. He likes to, close that distance. He's got decent striking, some pretty bad defense. He's pretty easily hit. He high guards a lot whenever he's, getting hit with some punches, and that leads him open for a body shot, which is exactly what Marlon Vera capitalized on and got the TKO finish for him. He also got dropped by Rolando Dy, so, again, I just went into how low-level an opponent Dy is, and he was, Buren was dropped by him, so that's definitely not a good sign. But Martinez is a small bantamweight for sure. He was a flyweight for most of his MMA career, and then when he got a short notice fight in the UFC for bantamweight, he accepted it, and he is staying at bantamweight. But he looked small in that fight against Sukumtad, who is definitely not a big bantamweight himself. Martinez has good jiu-jitsu. He's got some good submissions. He's good off his back. He's comfortable being in full guard, going for arm bars, triangles. Which, Buren could definitely get caught in. I think Martinez is pretty tough. He came into that fight on short notice against Sukumtad and, showed that he had some nice grit. And, but his defense is not very good. He got hit a lot by Sukumtad in that fight. He had a decent leg kick going on for the first round of that fight, but he was quickly abandoned that and was just overwhelmed by Sukumtad in this one. So this is going to be a really close fight to kick off the pay-per-view. It might seem like two lower-level guys, but I think they both deserve to be on the roster. They both got a good amount of skill, but, I think Buren is going to be trying to take this fight to the floor, and then, he could be up for getting caught in a submission by Martinez if he gets lazy on his in his takedown attempts. So we got to watch out for that. But if this fight stays on the feet, it'll also be fairly evenly contested. I think Buren will just be the bigger, more aggressive fighter in there, so there's a good chance that he gets ahead on the scorecards. But man, this is going to be a really close fight, and I'm going to lean with the underdog Buren's way just because I think there's a little bit of value on his line. I would really put this fight right around a pick'em. So the pick is going to be Luigi Buren to get it done. Moving on to the next fight in the lightweight division, we have Jalen Turner, who is 7-4, taking on Callan Potter, who is 17-7. The betting line for this one opened up Jalen Turner as the -300 favorite, Callan Potter at +220. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Turner at -240, Potter at +200. I'm going to agree with where the line movement has gone. I think that initial line was set way too high for Jalen Turner. I think Turner should be the favorite in this matchup. He has really nice striking. He's got a nice straight left hand that he really damages opponents with. He's got great knees as well, long distance knees, but his defense is not the best. He's definitely there for getting hit by punches. And he had his opponent on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series hurt really, really badly, and he just couldn't really finish him with the shots. This guy was out on his feet for a good 2 minutes, and luckily the round ended, and his opponent, I think, said he had an injury after the first round, and the fight was stopped, but it was a little bit worrisome. He had this guy practically, totally out of the fight, but just couldn't land that kill shot to get him out of there. And his opponent, Callan Potter, is coming into this fight on short notice. He is an Australian gentleman, a local guy who they gave a short notice call to. He's got decent striking. He's got a decent right hand. He's got some power behind, but he looks slow, man. His most recent fight, he looked slow. Like he had a knee brace on, and he was just moving, like a turtle out there. So Turner is going to be wicked faster than him on the feet. If this fight stays on the feet, I really see Turner lighting Potter up, landing that left hand over and over again, and really just dictating this fight throughout as long as it lasts. I think that if it goes on the feet the entire time, Potter's not able to get that takedown. I think that Turner will finish him despite my I don't know, my worries about his finishing ability. I think that he will get the finish if this stays on the feet. He's just miles ahead of Potter on the feet. But Potter's got some, a little bit of scrappy wrestling behind him. He likes taking this fight to the floor, and he's got really good submissions. He's got, a lot of submissions on his MMA record. So that's definitely where he's going to be trying to take this fight, no doubt. His Turner has shown some weakness on the ground. He's actually, just pretty unknown on the ground for the most part. But let me see see on his record if he has any fights I recognize where he was on his back. No, but one thing I did not mention about Turner is that he made his UFC debut against Vicente Luque 4 months and 2 days ago, and he was viciously knocked out in that fight. I'm talking knocked down with a punch and then just like grounded and pounded until his head bounced off the canvas. A brutal stoppage in that one. So 4 months ago, coming off that brutal knockout loss, I mean, it's something to think about in this fight. So, his chin might be a little deteriorated. Potter could catch that chin with the right hand, but, I like Potter's chances at getting this fight to the floor. I like his chances at getting a sub. I think the favorite should be Turner in this one, maybe -150, but where the line is set right now at -260, I definitely think that there's a little bit of value on Callan Potter. I saw him up at +240, +220 earlier in the week, and now he's at +200, so it seems like there's a good amount of money coming in on Potter. And, the pick is going to be Turner, but I do not knock any action on Potter at all. The next fight takes place in the lightweight division. We have Lando Venata, who is 9-3-2, taking on Marcos Mariano, who is 6-4. The betting line for this one opened up Lando Venata as the favorite at -275. Marcus Rosa Mariano at +195. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook right now, 5 dimes, we have Lando Venata -420, Marcos Mariano +335. So I'm going to agree with the line movement in this one. I think this is just a huge mismatch for Lando Venata. We've seen Lando Venata in the UFC a lot before. He's, most of his career, I think, has been in the UFC, and he's taken on a UFC newcomer in this one. But that's not the only reason why I favor him in this fight. Although Venata is winless in his last 4 fights, 2 losses and 2 draws. There's no shame in that at all. He's had some really, really good fights, close fights, and fought some really good competition along the way. And his defense is definitely his worst enemy. He's got great striking, great kicks, really creative striking, spinning back kicks, but he just keeps his hands low and he gets hit with a lot of shots. He was tagged by Matt Frivola, who is kind of a green striker compared to Venata. That was a really, really close fight. Venata had him hurt. He was hurt himself. It was a crazy back and forth fight, and it ended in a draw, which was probably the right decision. It's a damn shame they're not running that fight back. If it's a draw between 2 mid-level guys and there's no title shot in sight, why not just run it back right away so we can get a decisive winner about who's the better fighter. But nevertheless, we are moving on to this matchup with Mariano. He is a very tall lightweight. He's long, but he does not know how to use that reach at all. He just doesn't really have much striking, and his striking is definitely his better aspect of his game, but his jiu-jitsu is non-existent. He gets taken down easily, and he has no idea what jiu-jitsu is. He just holds on for dear life. This guy is Brazilian. He's a disgrace to the Brazilian name. He just holds on to his opponent. Doesn't hip escape. Doesn't try to sweep. Doesn't try to get up. He just holds on for dear life and looks at the referee, maybe hoping he'll stand it up. So Venata, not much of a jiu-jitsu guy. He does have decent submission game, and I think that he's, but he loves his striking. He really likes to get that knockout. He likes to get in brawls on the feet. So I think this fight will stay on the feet. I think Venata will, just outclass Mariano on the feet alone. So even though Mariano is super weak on the ground, I think Venata is going to keep this fight standing, and I think that he'll butcher Mariano to either a one-sided decision or a knockout in this one. So the pick is going to be Lando Venata to get the win in this one. Next fight in the bantamweight division, we have Teruto Ishihara, who is 10-6-2, taking on Kyung-Ho Kang, who is 14-8. The betting line for this one opened up Kang as the -305 favorite, Ishihara as the +225 underdog. And now looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.u, we see Kang at -365, Ishihara at +305. So even more money coming in on Kang in this one. I'm going to agree with it. I think Kang should win this fight pretty easily. He's only 3-2 in his UFC career, but that really doesn't really do him justice. He's got an incredible ground game, man. If you watch his fight against Michinori Tanaka, it's one of the best MMA fights I've ever seen. It's just straight scrambles and submission attempts and sweeps and takedowns. It's one of the best examples of ground fighting that I've ever seen. And he actually had a pretty close fight with Ricardo Ramos a couple months ago, or Ricardo Ramos, excuse me. I forgot he's Brazilian. So I really hold Kang pretty highly. I was really impressed with him in that fight with Tanaka. His ground skills are just incredible. Tanaka is a really good grappler of his own, and I think that Kang won that fight. He got the better of the grappling exchanges. But Ishihara is it's really questionable why this guy's in the UFC still. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights. He's fought pretty good competition, not the best competition, but, better, higher than average, I'd say. So, I guess that's why they're giving him one more shot. He doesn't really have, too much skill, though. I really hate to say he's got bad takedown defense. He doesn't have much jiu-jitsu, doesn't really have much... He likes scooting to the fence to get up back to his feet. He doesn't really have much, defensive jiu-jitsu or anything like that. And his striking just isn't that good either, man. For a guy whose weakness is definitely on the ground, he doesn't have much ability to strike to make the fight, worth it when he's on the feet. So he was taken down a lot by Gray Maynard. Who is, a terrific wrestler, but I think that Kang will be trying to attack that grapple-heavy game plan as well. He's going to be looking for takedowns, trying to get, position on Ishihara and be chasing those submissions, probably looking for a choke of some sort. So, I think Kang will, even if this fight stays on the feet, I think Kang will be the more active, comfortable striker. I think that he's just a better overall fighter at this point in his career, which is why you see such a steep price tag over him. I would definitely not bet on Kang's money line at this price. And I see a lot of people taking stabs at Ishihara, but man, I just can't do it. He's so bad. I really don't see, how he wins this fight. His margin that he wins this fight is very small. So I think you would have to hurt Kang with a punch on the feet and finish him with a TKO, because I don't see his pace being enough to outpace Kang throughout the fight, and I don't see his takedown defense or his submission defense holding up well enough if this fight gets to the floor. So the pick is going to be Kang to get this one done. Moving on to the next fight in the flyweight division, we have Kai Kara-France, who is 18-7, taking on Raulian Paiva, who is 18-1. The betting line for this one opened up Kai Kara-France as the favorite at -245, Paiva at +175. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see France as the -320 favorite and Paiva up to +260. So even more action coming in on France. And I'm going to agree with the line movement in this one. I think this is a very favorable matchup for Kai Kara-France. I think he's the better fighter, all around in this one. I think he's got the better ground game and the better striking. I was, I wouldn't say really impressed with him in his UFC debut, but he did do very well. He took on a very, very game opponent, who I'm totally blanking out on his name, even though I just watched the fight. Elias Garcia. Elias Garcia rocked France with a punch in that fight, and he actually got him close in a couple submissions. A triangle that was fully locked in the second round of that fight. So Kai Kara-France is, he's got a little bit of defensive liability. I think he is open for some punches to rock it. And his chin is, not the best either. He was rocked by Elias Garcia. So I think that he could get caught with a punch, obviously, by any fighter. But man, Paiva is just, I'm not even saying that guy's, Paiva is, he's just not really a great fighter either. He's very wild on the feet. He's got bad defense. He once he gets in an exchange, he's willing to trade. He's willing to throw bombs, but his defense, he just really throws to the wind, and he's totally susceptible to getting rocked himself. So. And, for being an 18-1 Brazilian fighter, he does not have much ground game either. It did not look like he had much jiu-jitsu ability, and his takedown defense was pretty bad from what I watched, too. So I was really unimpressed with Paiva. That 18-1 record is super, super padded. He has really not fought anybody too good. And, Kai Kara-France, I think he's going to be, trying to keep this fight on the feet. If it goes to the floor, I favor him there. I think he'll get top position. I think he'll land some good ground and pound. He might get a submission. His cardio looked really good too, Kai Kara-France, in that fight. He was, in the third round, he looked like a really fresh fighter against Garcia. It looked like he could go the full 5 rounds if he needed to. So I'm really expecting France to put on an impressive victory in this fight. And, he was a huge favorite in his last fight, and he looked a little bit lackluster. So I don't know if I would trust him all the way down to -320, but I'm going to pick him to win this fight. Next fight in the featherweight division, we have Austin Arnett, who is 16-5, taking on Shane Young, who is 12-4. The betting line for this one opened up Shane Young as the -275 favorite to Austin Arnett at +195. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Shane Young at -335, Austin Young at +275. So even more money coming in on Shane Young in this matchup, and I don't think I would agree with it. I think it's a little too wide for Shane Young at this point. I think he should be the favorite in this fight. I think he is the better fighter, but it's just too high of a price tag. We saw we saw Arnett come through as an underdog in his last fight against Humberto Badende, and people really weren't respecting him in that matchup either, and he ended up winning that fight. So that could, of course, happen again here. Arnett is a very scrappy fighter. He's a little bit awkward on the feet. Young is much more composed, except for when Young starts landing shots, he gets wild. He definitely does. He hurts you with the punch, and then he drops his guard a little bit, and he's susceptible to getting caught himself. So that could even though Arnett doesn't have much power in his hands, he's got decent striking, and I think he could certainly rock Young with a punch if he gets reckless in that defense. But They're both pretty good on the ground as well. Shane Young has the ability to hit some takedowns if he needs to. Like if he hurts you with a couple punches against the fence, instead of wasting more energy, he'll hit a takedown and then go for some ground and pound there too. So, and he's got good takedown defense himself. And if he does get taken down finally, he's got really good get up skills. He got up in that fight against Volkanovski. Man, he showed really good takedown defense against Volkanovski. We know Volkanovski's one of the baddest motherfuckers in the division with incredible striking and wrestling, and Shane Young held his own in that fight. He did lose 30-27 pretty decisively, but like I said, he was hard to take down, and when he was taken down, he bounced back up almost every time. So that was a very good showcase from Shane Young in that fight. So I don't think Arnett will have much success with the takedowns in this one. If Volkanovski couldn't take him down and hold him down, I really don't think Arnett will. And I think that Arnett will be outstruck on the feet. So I think that Shane Young will win this fight. I think he'll win it, probably by decision. I don't see him finishing his opponent Arnett in this one. Shane Young did pick up a knockout win via elbow in his last fight against Rolando Dai, the gentleman we mentioned earlier, but I don't really hold that win too highly. So, I think this is going to be a good fight. I expect it to be, pretty high output, high intensity kickboxing fight, and I favor Shane Young to get the victory in this one. And moving on to the lightweight division, we have Dong Hyun Kim. And this is Dong Hyun Kim, what is his nickname? The Maestro, not Dong Hyun Stun Gun Kim. So just clarifying that real quick. Dong Hyun Kim, who is 16-8-3, taking on Devontae Smith, who is 9-1. The betting line for this one opened up Devontae Smith as the favorite at -230, Dong Hyun Kim at +170. Since then, a little bit more money coming in on Devontae Smith, pushing him down to -250, and Kim up to +210. I think I'm going to agree with the line movement in this one. I think this is going to be it's a little bit of a mismatch, honestly. I think Devontae Smith is going to be much better in there. It's neither of these guys have much of a ground game. From what we've seen Devontae Smith actually lose on the ground in his fight against John Gunther 2 years ago. John Gunther, one of the lower level fighters on the UFC roster. If you guys are listening at this point in the program, you probably know about how low level John Gunther is. So the fact that he has a win over Smith is really alarming. But Smith in that fight, he rocked Gunther in the first 30 seconds. He gave him a cut under his eye, 4 inches wide. He almost finished him in the first 30 seconds, but he was taken down, held down, and then eventually he was TKO'd in the third round of that fight after getting taken down and laid on the entire fight. So Smith's takedown defense is not very good. His jiu-jitsu skills are not very good, and his, getting back up to his feet skills are not very good. But Dong Hyun Kim is not much of a wrestler. I don't think I've ever seen him wrestle in the octagon. He's coming off of a split decision win off of Damian Brown, which I really don't hold too highly. Damian Brown is a pretty low level UFC caliber guy. I don't even know if he's in the UFC anymore. He's really old. 34. He has gray hair, so I wasn't talking too much shit. Yeah, Damian Brown has been cut, but he went over to Ryzen and just guillotine choked Darren Cruikshank, so that's pretty impressive. But he did lose 3 fights in a row on his way out of the UFC, so I am correct in saying that win does not really hold much. I think Dong Hyun Kim looked pretty unimpressive in that fight too. And he also has a win over Takanori Gomi via knockout in 2017. So Kim is on a 3-fight win streak, so that certainly looks good. But man, I really think that Devontae Smith is the truth. He's got, despite what all that shit I talked on his ground game, his striking is great. He has a nice jab. He has a real nice calf kick. He digs in onto people's legs. If he tries to get taken down, he just knocked out his most recent opponent with elbows to the back of the ear while he was getting taken down against the cage. In his second most recent fight, and his most recent fight, he knocked out his opponent Julian Erosa with just a beautiful 1-2 combination. He just showed his accuracy and his power in that one. His straight punches, man. His jab is accurate, and his straight left hand is powerful, man. So watch out for that in this fight. his last opponent ate, 5 or 6 of those shots, and that's all it took for him to, go out cold. So I think Devontae Smith will be landing the harder punches in this fight. I think it's going to stay on the feet for the most part. If Dong Hyun Kim is working at his grappling and he finds a way to get this fight to the floor, it'll get interesting because Smith is pretty weak on the ground. But I think that I don't see anything from Kim that makes me believe that he will get this fight to the floor, and that's why I'm going to have to side with Smith in this one. So Smith as the favorite, I'm going to side with in this one. Next fight. Onto the main card, we have Jim Crute, who is 9-0, taking on Sam Alvey, who is 33-11. The betting line for this one opened up Jim Crute as the -245 favorite, Sam Alvey at +175. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Crute at -130, Sam Alvey at +110. So a lot of money coming in on Sam Alvey, pushing him from -1 or +175 to +110. So I do agree with the line being set a little bit too high in that one. I think Crute should be the favorite just based on his, his age, his athleticism, and his strength. Man, I just rewatched his last fight against Paul Craig, and it's one of the best examples of a guy, using strength to win a fight. He was in a bad position on the ground, he would power out of it. If he was, there was a scramble when he was about to get in a bad position, he would power out of it and get top position himself. I was really impressed with his grappling in that fight against a fighter who was supposed to be the better grappler. Paul Craig, everybody thought he would win the submission aspects or the grappling aspects of that fight, but Jim Crute really showed his showed off some good grappling, eventually getting the submission win in that one. He was threatening with submissions all fight long, and then he finally ended up getting one around the 14th minute of that fight. So his striking looked a little bit raw. We didn't really get to see too much of it in that fight. He looked pretty wild on the feet, but that's where this fight's going to get interesting, because he's taking on Sam Alvey, who is a very well established striker in the UFC. He's got good boxing, good counter punching. He's got a good chin. He's got we've seen this guy in the UFC forever, man. He's probably has 20 fights. He's gonna be tall and lanky out there. He's gonna be using that southpaw stance, looking for that lead check hook every time you come in. He's going to be popping that straight left every time you come in, and he's good at what he does. He and he's really hard to take down. It's I think Crute is going to be trying to get this fight to the floor. I think that he will realize that he's a little bit outmatched on his feet, and he will try his best in the grappling aspects, which is where it's going to get interesting. It's going to be that strength of Crute versus that good takedown defense of Alvey, and man, this is a hard fight to pick. Part of me wants to pick the younger, more hungry, the stronger guy, but part of me wants to pick the more experienced, more battle-tested veteran that is Sam Alvey. So, I don't think I have any action on this fight yet. I'm really sort of undecided. So coming down to a pick here, this is really, I'm just thinking out loud of how I'm going to pick this fight, because this is one of probably the only fight on the card which I really don't have a pretty confident lean on. It's just, man, I would think I might have to watch a little bit more tape just to get a better sense of this fight. Sam Alvey was knocked out in his last fight against Minotauro Nogueira, I believe, if I'm correct. I'm pulling up on Tapology right now. Yeah, he was recently knocked out by Nogueira. He had a couple good wins before then. He was taken down by Ramazan Emeev at middleweight, and lost that fight on the ground. So that's a really high level wrestler. So yeah, it's tough. It's a very tough fight to pick. I'm gonna lean with I guess the underdog Sam Alvey in this one, but not a confident pick at all. Moving on to the next fight in the women's flyweight division, we have Nadia Kassem, who is 5-0, taking on Montana De La Rosa, who is 9-4. The betting line for this one opened up De La Rosa as the -120 pick'em, and Kassem as the -120 pick'em, which is just one of the craziest opening lines I've seen all year. Right now, we see De La Rosa at -260, Kassem at +220, so tons of money coming in on De La Rosa, as you'd expect. That opening line was, incredible. shout out to anybody who was able to jump on that right there. You know, this is a really clear-cut fight. You know, we have De La Rosa, who is, you know, she's a little bit rudimentary in her striking. She seems to only really box. She jabs a lot. It's not really too effective, but she throws it out there a lot. She's got, like I said, decent boxing. Doesn't use any kicks, any knees, any elbows, anything like that. But where she wins fights is on the ground. She's got really good jiu-jitsu, really good submissions. She submitted both of her opponents in the UFC so far, one of them being a pretty experienced grappler in Rachel Ostovich. So I really think that, you know, that's where De La Rosa is going to shine in this fight. She's taking on Nadia Kassem, who is, you know, going up in weight. I thought she was a small straw weight, but, you know, I saw a picture of them standing next to each other, and Kassem looked taller. Now, I don't know if they had high heels on or whatever, because it was the media day. You know, girls do dress up for that and everything, and I didn't see the bottom half of their bodies, but that was certainly interesting. Kassem throws a lot of leg kicks. She has a lot of, like, you know, awkward striking. She does not look very comfortable on the feet. She throws a lot of kicks and knees and everything, but they're a little bit slow, and, you know, that's how she gets taken down. Alex Chambers was able to catch those kicks, catch those knees, and take her down. And you know, she did pretty good once she was on the ground. You know, she threatened with a few submissions, but she didn't really finish them. She, you know, had a couple heel hook attempts, didn't finish. A couple triangle attempts, didn't finish. So it seems like she has decent jiu-jitsu, which is not really that finishing ability to finish opponents at that high level. You know, her cardio looked like it was tailoring off a little bit in that fight against Alex Chambers. And man, that fight against Alex Chambers it was a red flag. You know, Alex Chambers is one of the worst women on the roster. I think she's been cut ever since. She's, you know, old 37-year-old woman. So and Kassim's 23. She's a young girl. So you were getting out grappled and pretty much out you know, just outstruck everything. Was losing that fight against one of the worst fighters in the division. That was a huge red flag for Kassem in that fight. And, you know, I wish I had some better news on how she's been doing since, but she hasn't fought since. She's had 15 months off. And it's, you know, it's apparently because she's had a lot of injuries. I think she had a hand injury, and she's also admitted that she's been suffering from depression and anorexia and a lot of mental health issues. So, you know, those are legit fucking issues, more so than you know, a hand injury or anything like that. You got to think about, you know, the mental aspect of this. And, you know, you hate to bring this up as a negative for a person, but, you know, we are, you know, talking about the numbers in this fight. We're trying to make some money betting on these fights. And, you know, you have to take these things into consideration. So, you know, I think that De La Rosa will be, you know, the better striker. She'll be the better grappler. She's going to be bigger, more physical in there. And she's, you know, just been more active and picking up wins in the UFC. So I got to side with De La Rosa. Even her as a minus 260 favorite, honestly, I think that's a really good price. I think there's a few favorites on this card that have good prices. You know, Kai Kara France, Kang, Venata, all those are reasonable prices, and another one of those is De La Rosa. So if you're looking for a parlay, I think De La Rosa, Kang, France, Venata, Young, those guys are all you know, decent picks for a parlay. So the pick is going to be De La Rosa in this one. Moving on to the bantamweight division, we have Hani Yahya, who is 26-9, taking on Ricky Simone, who is 14-1. The betting line for this one opened up Hani Yahya as the minus 175 favorite to Ricky Simone at plus 135. Right now, looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see a pick'em fight at minus 110 for both fighters. So a lot of money coming in on Ricky Simone. Rightfully so. I believe he, you know, Ricky Simone has, you know, really impressed me in the UFC so far. He's got really good takedowns. He's comfortable in pretty much every grappling situation we've seen him in. You know, we saw him get taken down by Merab Devashvili. You know, we saw him, you know, give up position a few times, but he remained real calm. He, you know, was able to reverse position. He was able to sweep or get out of there, get back to his feet after a takedown, and he really negated a lot of Merab's takedowns and probably drained Merab's energy a lot in that fight. And of course, that fight ended in you know, very controversial fashion, but in favor of Simone. You know, he he ended that fight on Merab's back, or going for that choke against Merab, that one-armed guillotine. So, Simone is just he's a much younger fighter. I think he's going to be quicker. He's going to be stronger in there. His striking is not very good. It's pretty average. I think he's got a little bit of a weak chin and questionable defense. He was rocked by Merab. He was rocked by Anderson Dos Santos back in the regional scenes. And but good thing he's fighting an opponent, Hani Yahya, who also does not have much striking. He's both of these guys are grapplers. They specialize in grappling, but different types of grappling. Simone is more of a wrestler. He's looking to take you down, land some ground and pound. Not really looking for position too much. He doesn't look for full mount side control. He just kind of takes you down and then lays grounding and pounding from the feet. So I think he's gonna be trying to replicate that game plan where he's on the feet. He sets up a takedown, gets a takedown. Maybe lands a few punches after the takedown, and then doesn't really want to engage with Yahya's dangerous jiu-jitsu game on the ground. Hani Yahya is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the UFC. He's got great submissions. He's got heel hooks, guillotines, chokes, arm bars, everything. He can threaten you from every position. And Simone is a bit reckless in these wrestling exchanges. He did give up his back a few times against Merab. He was in a few positions against Merab that if he was in that same position against Yahya, he could be in a threat for submission. So I think that Simone better be careful in this fight. He cannot, have reckless, grappling exchanges with Yahya, because Yahya will snatch your neck, he'll snatch your ankle, he'll snatch your arm or something like that before you even know what happened. But, there's a big difference in age in this one. I think there's a big difference in, where these fighters' careers are headed. I think Simone is, has got a lot of momentum behind him. Yahya's been doing good lately too, man. He just came off that win against Luke Sanders where he won by heel hook. In a fight, where his father passed away, I think the week of. He's got 3 submissions in a row. He's going back. He's got 7-1 in his past 8 fights. So Yahya is doing really good. The only thing is his level of competition is not the highest. A lot of his submissions are over lower level opponents. While I think Simone has already been fighting the better opponents. He just beat Montel Jackson easily, which is a really nice win now, considering how good Montel Jackson looked in his last fight. He obviously had that win over Merab, like we discussed before, and he's had some good wins over people in the regionals back in LFA. So I really liked Ricky Simone in this fight, and I think I'm gonna pick him to win this one. Have a little bit of action on him as well, but not too confident. Like I said, I think it's a really close fight. And Simone's going to have to fight smart to get the victory. But I trust him to do so, and I'm going to pick Ricky Simone by decision. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening in the middleweight division, we have Anderson Silva, who is 34-8, taking on Israel Adesanya, who is 15-0. The betting line for this one opened up Adesanya as the -400 favorite to Anderson Silva as the +280 underdog. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Israel Adesanya as the -600 favorite to Anderson Silva as the +450 underdog. So what an incredible fight we have between these two gentlemen. It's not too close of a matchup, but the fact that we're getting to see these two, different generational fighters go against one another is just going to be, a special sight to see alone. I'm looking forward to the fight. Initially when it was announced, I thought it was a bad matchup. I thought it was cruel to put one of the greatest of all times, Anderson Silva, who's getting up there in his years. I believe he's 42 years old right now. I thought it was cruel to put him against one of the top contenders, the youngest, most promising prospects in the sport, Israel Adesanya. But like I said, for the reasons I mentioned, just about how surreal it's going to be to see these two gentlemen against one another, it's going to be a fun fight. But Anderson Silva hasn't fought in 2 years. Last fight was against Derek Brunson. He won that fight via decision, a very questionable decision. I haven't rewatched that fight though, so I don't really have too good of a sense of whether that was a robbery or not. But I've been watching a lot of Israel Adesanya. He's debuted in the past year and a half, and I think he's 4-0 in that time already, picking up wins over Rob Wilkinson, Martin Vettori, Brad Tavares, and Derek Brunson, looking even more impressive in each fight. So he's really coming into his own in this fight. He's a world-class kickboxer. He's a world champion kickboxer. He's got great head kicks, great knees to the body. He's got good boxing. Everything about Adesanya is great. But on the feet is where Silva and Adesanya are actually fairly evenly matched. I think that Silva, as one time, was one of the best strikers in mixed martial arts. In history, he still goes down as probably one of the best. He has a great arsenal of elbows and kicks and knees and everything like that, and great clinch work. And like I said, he just goes down as one of the most iconic fighters of all time. So, and the one thing where this fight gets interesting is on the ground. And if they're, I think that Adesanya still will have the striking advantage, a slight striking advantage on the feet, just because I think he's the younger, more crisp striker at this point in his career. But Silva is going to have a huge advantage on the ground. Anderson Silva has been a black belt in jiu-jitsu for probably 10, 15 years. He's, been doing jiu-jitsu probably his whole life, 25, 30 years straight now. He's been training in the gi and everything. So Adesanya, man, I can't say the same about him. His ground game is certainly his weakness. We saw him taken down and controlled by some pretty low-level opponents like Rob Wilkinson and Marvin Vettori. Both of those guys were able to get him to the ground, able to control him for short periods of time, and then he was able to win those fights. Still, he was able to get back to his feet or survive the round or something like that. But certainly worrisome if you were have a lot of money on Israel Adesanya. Anderson Silva had never been known for wrestling, never really had great takedowns, but there are ways to get this fight to the ground. He could pull guard, he could try some shit he's been training, some entry to a takedown that some creative entry to a takedown that he's been drilling a lot lately in preparation for this fight. So it's going to be interesting. If Silva attacks that grappling heavy game plan, that he has a chance at winning this fight. He really does. If he gets, Adesanya in his guard, or if he gets, top control on Adesanya on the ground, there's a really good chance Silva pulls out a submission. I think he'll be the best grappler that Adesanya has fought if they end up on the ground, but that's going to be a tough task. Adesanya's takedown defense looked really good against Brad Tavares. Derek Brunson, who's a great wrestler, wasn't able to get him down. But Brunson had a terrible game plan in that fight. He was already getting tagged with punches before he could even set up his takedown. So I really don't hold much weight in that performance. Brunson just shit the bed in that fight totally. Not saying it was an easy task to defeat Adesanya, but he could have done a little bit better than that for the wrestling pedigree that he has. So it's, what a great fight when you think about it. It's going to be super surreal to see these guys in the octagon staring one another down. It's going to be, if fight stays on the feet, man, I really see Adesanya lighting Silva the fuck up. I see him knocking him out. I see him, putting on a really sad fight where we realize that Anderson Silva is not the man he used to be. He's gone through, had his problems with USADA. He's had a couple violations with USADA. We know that he had some testing problems. I don't care that the dude might have doped his entire 16-fight win streak. I just wish he would have that shit now, so he wouldn't have to be a 42-year-old withered man fighting a young, hungry 30-year-old fucking killer. We can make this fight a little more even, so it wouldn't be minus 600 plus 450. But nevertheless, really looking forward to this fight. I got more excited for it as the fight goes on, and it would be great to see Adesanya, get that great win on his victory, knocking out the legend Anderson Silva. It would be incredible to see Anderson Silva take down Adesanya, derail the hype train, and pull off a submission. Silva's submission line opened at like plus 2,000 or higher or something like that. So that's totally worth a stab. That is, I think, Silva's best path to victory in this fight is via submission. So get a little bit of stab money on Anderson Silva by submission. I think it's still around plus 1,500, and the pick is going to be Adesanya to win this fight via knockout. And moving on to the main event in the middleweight division, fight for the middleweight championship, we have Robert Whittaker, who is 20-4, taking on Kelvin Gastelum, who is 16-3. The betting line for this one opened up Robert Whittaker as the -245 favorite to Kelvin Gastelum as the +175 underdog. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu, we see Robert Whittaker as the -235 favorite, Kelvin Gastelum at +195. So two-way action coming in on this fight for sure. The initial action was, actually coming in Kelvin's way. Someone put a huge amount of money on Kelvin, pushed Whittaker up to -172, but then that money immediately came back down on Whittaker. But he, at some points, this line has been out for months, so the line has been going all over the place. But for the most part, money coming in on Robert Whittaker in this one. Rightfully so. He is the champion. He's battle tested. He's one of the best fighters in the UFC, in my opinion, right now. Robert Whittaker is just a fucking treasure, man. He's got great takedown defense. He's got, incredible striking, powerful striking. He's got great boxing. He's got head kicks. He's got a chin for days. He's got cardio. He's, he's just a terrific fighter. I can't say enough good things about Robert Whittaker. He's one of the toughest motherfuckers that ever walked in the octagon. He fought Yoel Romero, UFC 213, got his knee hyperextended in like the first minute of the fight. The first kick Yoel throws, it twists Robert's knee, 5 different ways at one time. He tells his corner, my knee's fucked after the first round, and he still goes out there, fights 20 more minutes, and retains his belt. Wins the belt, wins the interim middleweight championship back at UFC 213. So it didn't matter that he was fighting one of the scariest motherfuckers on 2 legs. It didn't matter that his knee was blown out. He won that fight. He defended the takedowns. He landed the better strikes. He picked up the pace as the fight went on, and he, got stronger as the fight went on, which is just incredible. Then he goes on and rematches Romero, gets knocked down twice in that fight against, Iron Man Yoel Romero, still gets up, gets back to his feet, and retains his belt in a 48-47 split decision. So, I could keep talking about Robert Whittaker, how he knocked out Derek Brunson in New Zealand and blew the fucking roof off that place, or how he knocked out Jacare Souza in the first round. Man, he's just got one, his past couple years, Whittaker has beat some of the, has accumulated one of the best resumes ever in the middleweight division. Beating Yoel twice, knocking out Jacare and Brunson, beating Rafael Natal, Brad Tavares, Uriah Hall. Just the dude is on a fucking streak right now. He's on a 9-fight win streak right now. But that's enough about Robert Whittaker. We'll talk about Kelvin Gastelum, because Kelvin Gastelum's a hell of an opponent. I've seen Kelvin Gastelum in the UFC for the past 3, 4, 5 years, and it's pretty surreal to see the dude finally get a title shot. We've seen him have his trouble with weight cutting. He had some tough losses. He climbed to the top where he thought he was one win away from a title shot, then he lost that a couple times. So he's really finally got his title shot in this one. It's good to see him getting the title shot. He's certainly earned it, defeating Michael Bisping, Jacare Souza, Tim Kennedy, Vitor Belfort, Johnny Hendricks. He's really got a great resume of his own in the past couple years. Let's start talking about a little bit of his fight details. He's got really great boxing, some of the best boxing in the UFC. He throws a lead right hook and follows it up with that left straight cross, and man, that's one of the best combinations that anybody throws in the UFC. The most consistent, just throws it out there, lead hook cross, and just, man, that floors people. It sent people flying. Knocked out champions like Michael Bisping, sent Jacare, Chris Weidman flying across the octagon. There is massive power in this guy's hands. He's got a really good sprawl, good takedown defense. He showed that against Jacare Souza. He showed some really good defensive jiu-jitsu in that fight too. He was taken down with 3 minutes left in the round in side control against Jacare Souza and survived a couple. He got mounted. He got him back in the half guard. He was able to retain his guard. Jacare was close to an armbar. Kelvin Gastelum defended that armbar very well. So he's on bottom against one of the best jiu-jitsu fighters in the UFC history, Jacare Souza, and he survives. That is a huge a huge feather in his cap for Kelvin Gastelum. You know, he's got an iron chin too, man. Like, Jacare Souza was hitting him with some bombs in their fight. You know, what an incredible fight those two gentlemen had. If you forgot how good of a fight that is, you got to go watch it. Jacare Souza versus Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 224 only happened in May of last year, but it's it's funny how quickly you forget about these great fights. But you know, Kelvin, he's hittable though. Both of these guys are hittable. You know, we saw Yoel rock Whitaker pretty badly multiple times in their fight. We saw Jacare hit Gastelum with some shots. The difference is Jacare was hitting Gastelum with some shots, and they weren't even phasing Gastelum. Whitaker was, you know, eating heavy shots and, you know, getting knocked down and getting back up. He's got a great chin, but I think Gastelum might even have the better chin. You know, Gastelum has had some cardio issues in the past. You know, we've seen him with weight cut issues. We've seen him, you know, gas out in fights. But we've also seen him, you know, go 5 rounds in Mexico City at, you know, 8,000 feet of altitude. So when the time comes when he needs to get his cardio on point, when he needs to get his takedown defense on point or his jiu-jitsu defense on point, he prepares very well for fights. I have to give him the man credit in that aspect. But, you know, so does Whitaker, man. He adapted terrifically between those Yoel Romero rematches. You know, he saw that kick that Yoel landed on him in the first fight that fucked up his knee, started training that himself, and started using it to fuck up Yoel's knee in the second fight. So he's really, you know, smart, really creative. You know, this is going to be a hell of a fucking fight. I see, you know, I see Whitaker, you know, landing the better shots throughout the fight. I see him landing that head kick. I don't think Gastelum, even though he's got an iron chin, I don't think that chin can hold, man. I think that Whitaker is just going to be accumulating tons and tons of damage with how hittable Kelvin is. I think that damage is really going to start. He's going to start feeling it in rounds 4 and 5, the championship rounds. And, you know, I can see Whitaker getting the knockout in the third, fourth, or fifth. I can see him winning the decision, maybe 49-46. I could also see, you know, Kelvin testing that chin of Whitaker in the first, you know, couple rounds. You know, like I said, we've seen Whitaker put on his ass before, and Gastelum certainly has the power to do it again. It just really comes down to that finishing ability. You know, someone who can land those extra shots on the ground or land that extra punch on the feet to make Whitaker go out instead of just going down. Because, you know, Whitaker, you know, we haven't really seen him knocked out since Stephen Thompson did it, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. So it can be done. It's been done before, but it's going to be a tough task for Kelvin Gastelum to test that chin of Whitaker. You know, I see maybe Gastelum knocking him down, just like Yoel did, but I see Whitaker getting back up, and I see him, you know, being right in Kelvin's face again after he gets that knockdown. So, you know, both of these guys seem like fucking juggernauts, honestly. Like, the way, you know, I feel like Juggernaut is Kelvin Gastelum's nickname for some reason, but maybe I'm mistaken. You know, these guys just take an incredible amount of damage and just keep dishing it out. So it's going to be a hell of a fucking fight. I'm going to side with the champion, Robert Whitaker. I think he gets this one done via late knockout or via decision. But, you know, would not be that surprised to see Kelvin Gastelum maybe spark Whitaker, you know, getting a knockout in the earlier rounds. I don't think that Kelvin will have the output or the cardio to, you know, outpoint Whitaker to a decision. So Gastelum's best path to victory is an early knockout. So the pick is going to be Whitaker, and man, I can't wait for this fight. So at first glance, you know, UFC 234 not looking like the strongest fight card, but after, you know, analyzing all the matchups, we got some really good matchups going down this Saturday night. We got a 12-fight card, and you know, with that being said, we are going to rewind the clock a little bit to this past weekend with the card that went down in Fortaleza, Brazil, UFC on ESPN +2, headlined by Assunção versus Moraes 2. So starting things off, we had Rogerio Bontorin pick up the split decision victory over Magomed Bibulatov. Huge underdog victory in this one, but Bontorin showed up, man. This guy was game. He was, you know, spamming that leg kick. He showed some really good, some jiu-jitsu in this fight as well. You know, I was really, really impressed with Bontorin in this one. You know, he was able to take Biblitov's back a lot of times. He was able to land some hard punches on the feet. You know, he didn't look perfect by any means, but he came through big in that underdog situation and beat Bibliotov. So, great performance from him. We had Saeed Nurmagomedov finish Ricardo Ramos. I think it was a spinning back kick. Maybe it was. I think it was a spinning back kick to the liver, and then finished him up with some ground and pound. Saeed just looking tremendous in this fight. Ricardo, man, he shit the bed. He was just, couldn't close that distance. He didn't look like he had no idea how to close the distance. And, Saeed, being the longer, lengthier striker, was able to just pick him apart at range and get the finish in that one. So, next fight, we had Geraldo de Freitas defeat Felipe Colares in a very brutal fight to watch. Colares is just really low level, should not be in the UFC. De Freitas was beating the pulp out of him on the feet, but just decided to take the fight to the ground every time he had Colares hurt. He would hurt him with a couple punches, then take him down, and then do no damage on the ground and let Colares clear his head. It was really frustrating to watch. Can't imagine if anybody bet De Freitas by, inside the distance or fight doesn't go decision. That would have been really frustrating. But, De Freitas looked, pretty good. He looked, UFC caliber, pretty well rounded in there. Colares definitely not. He should definitely not get another fight in the UFC. Next fight, we had Jairzinho Rozenstruik defeat Junior Albini via knockout. Incredible performance from Rozenstruik in that one. He was, I think he was taken down in the first round of that fight, but was able to survive. Albini was not able to get any submissions, and Rozenstruik eventually got the knockout, being the, much superior striker to Albini on the feet. He withstood that grappling attack from Albini early and was able to get the knockout. So really impressive debut from Rozenstruik in that one. We had Thiago Alves defeat Max Griffin via split decision. Close fight. Could have gone either way, but in Brazil it went Alves' way. I was on Alves, so I'm pretty biased in this one, but I really think that, that third round was close. I think Max Griffin won the first round easily, Thiago Alves won the second round easily, and then the third round was, it was close, but I think that, Max Griffin, it really depends. I remember it being like, Max Griffin had 4 minutes of control on the ground, but didn't do anything. It was just laying and praying on Alves, while Alves had maybe a minute of a few good punches landing. So it really just comes down to what you think is more. I really think that, landing a few punches kind of outweighs, blanketing somebody for a few minutes because you're so exhausted. So don't really see too much controversy in the decision there, especially because I bet on Alves. So, next fight, we had Mauro Romero Barella defeat Talia Santos via decision. Barella stepped up big in this one. Santos looking, pretty mediocre. People were pretty high on her. Her coming in as, a decent sized favorite. She's got, good kickboxing and leg kicks, but just, didn't really have anything in the clinch. Didn't really have anything for takedowns. Barella was getting this fight to the floor and, making an ugly fight, and she won the fight. That way. So moving along, we had Marcus Perez defeat Anthony Hernandez via Anaconda choke in the second round. Beautiful performance from Perez in that one. He closed the distance, he negated the striking of Hernandez, and was able to get the fight to the floor where he specializes and get that choke. So really good performance, and cashed on a play on Marcus Perez there. That was a really easy play. People were tweeting out that play, telling everyone to get on it. The second the line came out. So it was pretty funny that the fact that Perez was still an underdog, even though almost everybody I know was on Perez. Next fight, we had Livia Renata Souza defeats Sarah Frota by decision. It was a split decision apparently, but I think Souza really won that fight, pretty decisively. I don't really remember too much about it, except for it was not as exciting as I expected. Johnny Walker knocked out Justin Ledet via, spinning back fist, pretty crazy knockout in this one. Johnny Walker continues to impress people. I was afraid to eat my words. I said last week, I would be really shocked if Ledet won this fight. Because he has no ground game, and he's got decent boxing, but he was fighting a really dynamic striker in Walker, and Walker made really quick work of him. So, nice play with Walker there, and can't wait to see him against next. He's one of the most exciting prospects in the UFC now. Not really in terms of his fighting. We haven't really seen all that much of his fighting, but his personality is great. So. Hope to see more of Walker soon. Next fight, we had Charles Oliveira defeat David Tamer via an anaconda choke. Really great performance from Oliveira in this one. Was able to hurt Tamer with an elbow, I think, on the feet, and then search for that choke on the ground. It was a dogfight, man. It was a close fight, and both of these guys were hurting each other. There was like some eye pokes going on in the beginning of the fight, but Oliveira toughened it out and was able to get the finish in this one. So great performance from Oliveira. We had Damian Maia defeat Lyman Good via rear naked choke. Just got on his back on the cage. Lyman was not able to defend the choke as expected. Maia, world champion jiu-jitsu black belt. One of the best grapplers in UFC history. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening, we had Jose Aldo defeat Renato Moicano via knockout in the second round. Incredible performance from the legend. It was a pretty close first round. They were jabbing and leg kicking one another back and forth. It was a pretty close tentative feeling out process, but Aldo was able to rock Moicano with a right hook, I think, in the second round, and then swarmed him with a barrage of punches, eventually getting the TKO in that fight. Just vintage Aldo performance is great. He's finished both of his fights via knockout back to back. His first knockout since like UFC 142, I think. Great to see him back. Knocking people out. Chasing that finish like a madman. He says he's retiring. He says he's old. He says he's not chasing the title anymore. But he just took out 2 of the top 5 prospects in the featherweight division. If I'm the UFC, I'm stopping giving Aldo prospects. Moicano could have fought for the title soon, but all of a sudden you got some guy who says he's not interested in fighting for the title, knocking off all your top prospects. If Aldo is saying I'll fight Volkanovski, I would keep him far away from Volkanovski. Give Volkanovski to Aldo, or give Volkanovski to Holloway, and then or even the Ortega fight. I don't like Ortega versus Aldo. It'll be great. I think it'll be a great matchup, but in terms of it really ruins Ortega's stock. I think if he comes and loses back-to-back fights against Aldo, everyone's going to be bringing up, oh, he lost to Aldo, a declining Aldo, a guy who was past his prime and he still lost to him. I can see them saying that up against Moicano or against Stevens in their next fight. People are going to be bringing that up. So, I would give Aldo some easier fights, whether it's the Anthony Pettis fight or, I don't know, the McGregor fight, of course. He's obviously looking for that one, but I would stop giving him such, fucking killers. Not for his sake. He's beating them easily, it seems like. Not easily, they're still hard-fought fights. But he's coming out, he knocked both of them, one of them out in 4 minutes and one of them out in 6 minutes, so he's not struggling too much. But man, it's just so great to see Aldo out there still, beating motherfuckers up. He's far from done. He's not past his prime yet. I mean, the dude is still beating the top 5 featherweights. You can't call him past his prime. So even though, Max Holloway might be his kryptonite, he's still, one of the best fighters in the UFC right now still. So moving on to the main event, we have Marlon Moraes defeat Rafael Sunsao via guillotine choke in the first round. Moraes rocked the Sunsao with a punch in this one. I think it was a right overhand right, and then was able to follow up with that tight guillotine choke. Moraes showing off more of his knockout power, and he showed off a little bit of slick submission game in this one too, submitting the Sunsao. So, great performance from Moraes. 3 knockouts or 3 first round finishes in a row. There's no denying that Marlon Moraes needs a title shot. I think this nonsense with Cejudo wanting to fight Dillashaw again, it's nonsense. You have to book Joseph Benavidez versus Henry Cejudo, and you have to book Marlon Moraes versus TJ Dillashaw. I want to see Cejudo versus Dillashaw again too, but we could do that after they fight their deserving contenders. They made that fight when there were no real clear contenders at flyweight or at bantamweight, but now there are clear-cut contenders, and you have to make them fight the contenders at their weight classes instead of doing these pointless super fights. So, Marlon Moraes looking great in that fight, and hopefully the title shot is next for him. Alright, and checking the general MMA news stories for the week, I really didn't see much news, didn't really see anything worthy of noting, so that is going to be it for the podcast this week. Just want to thank everybody for tuning in once again. And like I said, anybody who is interested in coming on to the Martian MMA podcast to dissect the UFC fights, hit me up on Twitter at UFO_UFC, and we can set up a podcast, and I'd love to have you guys on. Thank you to my affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu. You can check out the description of the YouTube videos for my affiliated link for 5 Dimes, the best sports book for MMA betting lines by far, the most props, the reduced juice lines, live betting lines, and money lines earlier than any other betting site. So 5 Dimes is definitely going to be your best option for MMA betting. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious beings tuning into the podcast, thank you for tuning into episode 48 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts, and I will see you guys next week before UFC Phoenix. Peace.